Hey Richard, what's up, buddy?
Hey, uh, I'm just in a fairly, I'm all in the thick of job switching at the moment. I have an offer and I'm doing the plan of sort of securing, like sort of doing the final securing of the offer. And then I will be trying to move back to the Washington area where I lived before. Uh,
Cool.
yeah, it's pretty
What's the
exciting. I
job?
really like that area. The job will be doing like front end, like web development with a framework called React.js, and that may not mean anything, but it's one of the technologies that I like the most. I find it easiest to work with, and the job is like making like sort of a web app that will run in a web browser, and that's definitely like the kind of programming that I enjoy the most because I think it's also useful for my side projects. Whenever I do a side project, it's usually something that runs in the web browser. So I'm pretty excited about the work, and it'll be a fully remote job. So I'll be just working out of my apartment. Maybe we'll try to get like a 2 bedroom apartment somewhere because we don't have to go to because we don't have to go to an office. We can sort of search for an apartment anywhere. But we know that we like the hiking in the Washington area, so maybe
Oh,
everything
good.
can come together. And yeah, I think it'll be a pretty good. Hopefully, it all smooth over the next week. I guess I'll be like trying to secure down everything, like make sure the offer's gonna come through and that I can sign something. And then there's all like the visa switching and everything. Uh, but that it's all if it I think it's all likely to work out. I believe, and it should be pretty fun. And also the companies told me that they'll help me do like what's called the perm process, which is moving me from like a TN visa to a green card, and that would be the ideal thing. That's what I'm hoping for. Is maybe in a year or less, could I get like a green card and then make my way to citizenship? That would start to feel like I'm uh, advancing in life instead of being kind of stuck.
Yeah, if you want to stay in the States, then makes sense.
Yeah, and I at least for a bit. There's possible futures. Like one possibility is down the road trying to find like a house to buy in the Washington area. Maybe we would do that for a bit. But I think ultimately, like when I'm older, I can't see living outside of Canada in terms of just the free healthcare. I don't know how to deal with those like expenses in retirement in the States. So I assume eventually I'll be back in Canada. But for
Well, my
now,
friend,
yeah, for now it would be nice. Yeah.
Canada's healthcare is terrible,
Yeah, and
so you'd be
I
better
imagine
off.
it'll get worse by the time I really need it, it's gonna be even worse, I imagine. But it's
Well,
hard to, it's like, yeah, I guess having both citizenships, right? Like I can try to see a doctor in Canada, and if I want to rush the timeline, I can go to the States and pay a bunch of money to get the same thing.
yeah, I suppose. But here's an idea: just live a healthy life, as healthy as possible. Stay away from the toxins, the pollution, all that stuff, so you lower your risk of cancer. This whole thing of
Yeah.
like being able to survive off of less than 8 hours of sleep isn't really a thing. They're like, oh well,
Hmm.
Bill Gates only slept 5 hours, but also Bill Gates had a heart attack, fucking died, came back. Well, obviously still alive, but
Mm.
there had to be medical intervention, so his lifestyle isn't sustainable, and that's a life of sleep deprivation. And that's the first thing, and then there's training, maintaining your body, and eating healthy. So I know you're active, but I also know that you eat a lot of shit. So, but
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is,
Yeah, I would suspect. I don't think I overall. I think I could improve my health a lot by just having a more regular fitness routine and eating more healthy. Yeah,
exactly.
I worry. Yeah, yeah, I guess unexpected stuff could always happen. But yeah, I think I could reduce the probability a lot from where I am. And it does,
Hmm.
yeah, it does feel like in today's world, the healthcare is not a reliable thing. So it's sort of we have to like insulate ourselves by just doing what we can, which is kind of I guess it's not a because no matter what we do, we may still end up relying on healthcare for something. Uh,
Yeah, you could have a
but yeah, it
gallbladder
seems like we're
issue or something,
yeah.
or something that happens. But
Hmm.
overall, if you can avoid the larger health related issues, that would be best. Because, like I said, the wait list, the service in Canada is pretty terrible. So I wouldn't have your retirement plan aim to be sick if you can help it. Instead, do everything you can now to keep as healthy as you possibly can. For instance, like working in a programming job, I don't know often or how long you sit on your ass, but becoming sedentary is probably one of the worst things that you can do, even if you are physically fit and eating well and sleeping, because all the compression that's happening to your capillaries in your ass area. It's really not good. It's also bad for your heart too when you're sitting for too long, because your calves act as a second heart. When you're walking and when you're moving, your calves are squeezing and helping to pump the blood back up to your heart. And so by sitting for too long, we're making our heart work extra hard.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah, because I've noticed sometimes like for example, when I had the dental surgery a few weeks ago, I end up taking like 2 weeks off from physical activity, and my heart always does feel a bit different. Like I'll feel lightheaded, for example, sometimes, and I guess that's likely due to sudden stoppage of physical activity, resulting in maybe something as tangible as the calves just not working as hard, and therefore the heart getting less blood than it's used to. I wonder about stuff like that.
I mean, all you have to do is just pay attention to it. So I worked out all day. Well, not all day, but all morning. I drove an hour and a bit, and I deliberately took a stop to kind of break it up because I know sitting too long is not good. And then I came to my buddy's place, and I've been sitting a lot more than I would like. And I said, hey, I'm going to go grab some food. He couldn't join me because of, reasons. And so I walked for 45. I'm just trying to stay mobile, but I've been sitting for the last couple hours, and I can feel my heart beating harder. I can feel the anxiousness starting to creep up. I can feel the numbness in my ankles right now, and my calf. I'm standing up now, and I'm gonna start pacing because I've been sitting too much. I can feel the physical changes, and people tend to mask and cope. So what I'm sure a lot of people would do is at this point in time be like, well, fuck, I don't feel good. I'm starting to feel anxious, and they'll start drinking. They'll have some alcohol to take the edge off, or they'll consume some sort of substance, or distract themselves or eat because they're uncomfortable. But like, I'm actually able to realize, because I'm not doing any of that shit right now and I'm fasting before bed, that this is just my body telling me to get the fuck up. But we tend to push through that, especially if we're working a white collar job or, armchair professionals. And it's because civilization isn't adapted, or our bodies rather have not adapted for civilization. And fuck, I don't think it's going to. We're physical beasts that have to move. But I suppose the point is we have to maintain our health, because we're getting older and things are slowing down, and it's going to require more and more work to kind of maintain the status quo. And I would say that it's better to bank on being healthy and mobile as you get older instead of planning on being sick. But anyway, I don't want to keep repeating myself.
Yeah, it's more. It's like planning. It's kind of like planning for the worst case scenario. I don't have a great idea. I just feel like everyone old always ends up like old folks home, like an old folks home with like prescriptions, some kind of replacement surgery. There's all these like period. Like I feel like everybody at some point, if you live long enough, you go through these expenses, and it's not clear to me. I guess, when people are older, like they can sort of it just means they lose kind of the savings they would have passed on, get like sucked away. And that doesn't really affect them personally. But if they're sort of, it's kind of, it feels like it's nice to prevent like corporations from just like taking all your money for various health reasons at some point. That's like, I mean, maybe that's the motivation, is just prevent corporations from like eating all your life savings by staying healthy.
Yeah, well, sick people are profitable, right? So it's not
Mm.
like you being healthy, and the way the system is set up is to make people sick and to profit off that sickness. I personally don't want to be sick.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other part there? Anyway, yeah, I could be very pessimistic and cynical if I keep focusing on it. I think it's a terrible model, capitalism, to profit off of people's illness and to feed them garbage, and for that to be legal. Like, I'm looking at my buddy's pack of cigarettes right here, and it's about tongue cancer. There's an image of this lovely tumor on this guy's
Yeah.
tongue that's about an eighth of the size of it. And 36% of mouth cancer victims die within the 5-year period. And I'm just like, how the fuck is this legal? How does our country sell that? How is that legal? Because to
Yeah,
have
it's messed
pure
up that even
tobacco,
yeah, it's so clearly like addictive. Even with those ads and those stats on them, it's like a high profitable product. And that's pretty
it is.
clearly like an addictive things. Yeah, it's like not in the best interest of people. They need something more than just being told that it's bad for them. It needs to be like regulated.
The way to do it is completely ban it, except for the indigenous who ultimately gifted settlers with tobacco, and just simply regulate them by saying you can sell your tobacco, but you can't have any chemical additives in it. And it's going to cause them and their business to boom, which ideally is great. So, yeah, they deserve a little bit of fucking income, especially if they're selling a product that they originally founded and gave to us instead of big tobacco poisoning us with it. It's I see it for what it is, and in the end, it's, you can do your best to try to avoid everything, but there's just so much, and there's always something new that's coming out that's you think is good, and then down the road it's not. You realize it's going to cause issues. It's like when we first started using lead for everything. Like, we had lead in our gasoline and lead pipes and stuff. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
lead kills us. And then there's asbestos. So, what else? Oh yeah, microplastics. That's the other thing too, is like these single-use microplastics. There's a place for plastics. Yes, it can be used in technology and other things, but the single-use plastic thing should be eliminated. I do think microplastics are going to have serious consequences. If we already have some in
It's
our
crazy.
balls,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
how does that not protect? How does that not impact fertility? And if the
Yeah.
plastics,
There
like,
was that whole, yeah.
if,
Yeah.
if
Like
they
in
emit
terms of that.
toxins too, then that's not good either.
Yeah. And like, I guess there was an air, like that area you're talking about, like the leaded diesel fuel and where like everyone smoked in every workplace. It's crazy that like a lot of people that are alive today lived through that era of like lead everywhere and secondhand smoke everywhere. Like you'd think that this next generation that doesn't have as much lead in them and as much smoke would just get like a 20-year boost on their lives from just not having to work through like clouds of smoke constantly for
Well,
like 20 years.
yeah, I mean, there's a second hand, but then there's just like a lot of poor people are smoking. Pretty much everybody in my family household is smoking. It's disgusting, and like they can barely pay their water bill, and yet they're buying cartons of cigarettes. It fucking makes no sense to me. None. And I remember now what I was going to say when you mentioned about old people getting, surgeries and being put in old age homes and stuff.
Mm.
That's, I think, because when people could actually retire, which is becoming less of reality for more and more people, they just stop what they're doing. They stop the routine, and if they don't have hobbies or dependents to look after anymore, they kind of lose their sense of self. They don't have pets, empty nest syndrome, partner dies, whatever, then they're very alone, which is also a stressor. And as people get older, their friends die too. And if they're not putting themselves out there, then they're not meeting people. And so, like, if you kind of add all this up and they start to become depressed, then they're put on SSIRs because the fucking doctors push that like there's no tomorrow. Then they become sedentary and they get obese. Then they get dementia because I think that's considered, for sure I heard it's like type 3 diabetes. And then they lose their cognitive ability and their
Dementias?
brain, yeah, and their brain decays and they just lose their ability to function. And they become incapacitated, and not all of them are incapacitated when they're put into a home, but that's a terrible existence. And we don't have to live like that. But that was a gradual progression over time. For most people, that doesn't just happen with a snap of the thumb. Those are life choices. That's only working for the system or being a caregiver and then no longer having purpose. But being somebody who is retired, like, yeah, I could see myself doing nothing and being lost if I didn't remain curious. And I would say that I would go a step further and I would say that that's the product of being institutionalized, which all of us slaves are. Since we're put into kindergarten, secondary, post-secondary education, everything is an institution. We are trained to be blue-collar, white-collared slaves. The carbs, rice, pastas, grains, all slave food. Easily produced, mass-produced rather, easily stored, relatively cheap to make, high energy. It's all slave food at the end of the day. And that's what is told that one of our primary things that we should be eating on the food pyramid.
Right. Yeah, I came
So it's like the
across
whole yeah.
yeah. Or yeah, you could
So
finish your thought if you want. Yeah.
everything is set up for us to be institutionalized slaves. And the problem with institutionalization, I mean, there's many problems with it. It stifles our curiosity. It's a breeding ground for bullies. The weak get picked on, or the nice get picked on. So it makes everybody hardened and insensitive, rigid thinking. That's what is shaping a lot of the people in North America. I can't speak about the rest of the world because I just don't know, but I can only speak to
Yeah.
what I've seen. And that's a terrible way to be. I'm starting to become wise to it, and I realize like I'm impacted by the institution. I used to be a very loving and genuinely warm person, boundless generosity, and I was always targeted in every place I've ever went to, every group home, every school. I was always targeted, and somehow I would persevere, become like the top of my class, join sports teams. I think it was really the sports teams and the strength that came with the numbers eventually that helped me do it, but always targeted. And then I now harbor resentment and I'm armored and I'm bitter. And these are all things that I have to work on and let go of because it impacts my perspective and how I navigate the world. And so as I discover Buddhism and Taoism and all that stuff, I realize in order to achieve sage status, saint status, which is where I want to be, to kind of receive the innocence and the curiosity I had as a child, I need to let go of all of this stuff that has been impacting me. I need to let go of control and the need to have certain outcomes.
Yeah.
And it's so sad to see that majority of the people I'm around are enslaved. And that they're
Yeah.
focused on and they're focused on just like the day job and making money and like having maybe a couple hours of downtime. Like it's a terrible existence. It's unfair.
Yeah, that
Go
all
for it.
makes sense. Yeah, the ideas I was going to bring in are that on a couple of podcasts, people have like based on the stuff you're saying here, like you're using very bold like language, like slaves and like sort of this imprisonment and stuff. But I would say like that's all true in essence, but it's interesting that when we bring in language like that, it makes people that are like inside the system and haven't really begun their journey of like discovering like the prison that they're in, when they hear that language they think it's like hyperbole and like over the top, and it's almost like it's hard for the average person to believe that there's a clear, a clear case can be made for that kind of level of like enslavement of everyone. But I think it is like the more I learn about it, the more I do feel like from a young age, and no one is doing this intentionally, but it's like there's a status quo and there's institutions and there's curriculums and there's censorship and there's like the rich and the powerful in different ways lobby the government and influence. And it is very profitable for them, for us to be a little bit beaten down and a little bit willing to accept, our lot in life and not ask for things better. Uh, and the, and so I sort of see like, yeah, it is shocking to sort of start to read into society and see how bad it actually is compared to what I believe we could have. But it really requires like, because people, they look back in history and they see like, well, everyone in history had it worse than us, and so they use that to say that like, well, we have it the best now. But they're not really taking into account like how good it could be if we use our imagination to imagine like a future where everyone is treating each other fairly and very open. No one really has the vision to get there, and it's very hard to fight against like the money and the propaganda and the advertising and the stuff that convinces us like what we want is the next commodity or the fancier like things to buy, and not actually some deeper meaning that doesn't. Because as soon as we realize that the happiness we really want is cannot be bought and cannot be gotten from climbing the ladder, we're not as focused or bought into the system, and we become like less productive workers to be exploited. And so yeah, a lot of the like, yeah, it's interesting the sort of the journey that you're describing, where you've stepped out of the system and you like as an individual you're free to sort of explore like making, bettering yourself and learning about the system from kind of like outside of it. But then I can see how like for me I still feel like the only way the numbers work in my case is by like remaining in the system, which places me as like a worker. And so then I see a lot of like a lot of the stuff I'm interested in is workers coming together and workers showing solidarity, because I feel like a lot of the stuff that I see coming to me from like when I see like Ludditism and Marxism and communism, and then also like Buddhism and mindfulness, the ideas that start there, like workers see them in like workers sort of see, we want to have a job and a life and we want our careers to enable us to continue working in the regular workplaces, but get those other things that we want, like work-life balance and these like time off, reduced work, more fair, better conditions. We want to bring those things into the workplace so we can sort of, be productive workers, but also achieve like something akin to like enlightenment. So that's sort of where it's like the perspective that I've been coming at it with is that sort of thing. Like how can workers and people come together to fight for an opportunity to get these things? But then obviously, like whenever someone can remove themselves from the institutions as much as possible and become separate, like outside of needing to like run the treadmill or something, then they can do extra, they can just be free to explore without the constraint of like trying to try to figure out. But then I guess a lot of people that are not tapped into that worker movement, like you're saying, like a lot of your friends and stuff, a lot of people, like their life is designed so they like don't have the time, or they don't like the news, the mainstream media will not tell them this. They won't figure it out themselves, being like tired after every work shift and distracted by their kids. like everyone is so distracted, and like school will never teach it to them. They have no means of finding this knowledge, and their life is designed to keep them away from it and make them feel like they can't afford to like consider pursuing it. And so they are, yeah, it does really seem like they're trapped, and their prison is like engineered around them. Uh, and
Yes.
I don't know, I've just gotten a lot of information through podcasts like myself is sort of, but yeah, whenever it is a very interesting topic. Actually, the most recent podcast I heard that stood out to me was an artist making the argument that like artists can use art to present the population with like simplified, aesthetically pleasing, or uh, like fascinating art like projects that allow the public to like be entertained and shift their mindset. And like that to me, that seems like powerful good art is something that is so easy to observe or intake, but it changes your frame of like your relationship to how you think about the world by the correct art project at the right time. Like uh so that was an interesting thing to me, is how can we communicate to people that like they don't have time to receive like a complicated lecture or get an education? How can we make projects that really reduce and simplify things, like just, like as simple as like have an artist take a photo of downtown and then draw over top of it what could you have, what lavish like parks and creeks and things could you have instead of the regular like gridlocked traffic, and just show people that image, and maybe that gives them something they can hold in their head as like an ideal, and then people start thinking about getting that instead of just accepting that you got to wait in traffic every day or something.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's a very slippery, like interesting topic. I find this very fascinating because the institutions are so concrete and baked in that it's very challenging to think about the world without assuming that like some things just exist when a lot of it is human created. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like I understand why we are this way. We've hit a point of no return because of our population booms. And history has shown that if you don't grow and you don't better your technology, you'll be conquered or assimilated by a neighboring tribe or state or whatever. And, all of human history kind of, well, not all of it, like the last, well, agriculture evolution, the last 10,000 years have shown that. Out of, I think our species is 7 million years old, and it's just like the last 10 that's been absolutely crazy and a shit show because we've had food, domesticable food to increase our populations. Well, essentially, all of these nations have been built off of the backs of slaves, frankly, peasants, slaves, however you want to name them. And I know that we need the rule of law in order to control a larger population. We need the bureaucracy and the things in place to make sure that it doesn't crumble. I get it. I get why. I would say our main problem is that we don't have, as a species, a common focus. We don't have something that unites us. I wish it was space exploration to discover the unknown. Our sci-fi, and this is why Star Trek, Star Wars, well, not so much Star Wars, but Star Trek really fascinates me because they get to a point where there's no money, food, anything you could ever want can be replicated. Energy is free and almost infinite, also very dangerous because they have to have their fusion up in space, and it gives them the ability to progress their technology and to expand and to explore. And people are motivated to, and yes, they fit into like a Navy like military structure, that the Starfleet, but of course command and control is needed for those kind of missions. But the best and the brightest are grown and nurtured, and there's roles for other people. Transportation is easy, pollution is dealt with. because humanity has united together to solve these problems. We have the ability to do so. It's not profitable. And we have conglomerates that are ultimately playing or pulling the strings with their lobbyists. And they're obviously affecting policy, but they're getting in the way of people who have real solutions to these issues. So,
yeah, it does seem, yeah, there's like no, like if someone has an idea along these lines, there doesn't seem to be a way to get like funding in a way that doesn't, like if anyone started a company pursuing any of these ideals and it got big enough, they would get like investment and then get like IPO and acquired, and the company would become like a profit. Everything would be like co-opted by capital sort of at some point. It's hard to, we don't have like a mechanism for preventing that kind of stuff.
I'm happy to have learned that green companies are doing very well, doing better. Like a green portfolio with Wealthsimple is doing better than classic. And that's nice. That's a step in the right direction. Surprising, but perhaps investors are being more green focused, like looking at nuclear as the future. Of course,
And
fission right
hopefully,
now, but eventually
yeah,
fusion.
that's hopefully like a true thing. I think there's so many tricks. Like if companies know that green sells, they can find a way. Like there's even a thing called like carbon credits where a company can continue like polluting as much as it wants, and it can just buy carbon credits which represent the idea that like some other company is planting trees. And by buying those credits, they can state that like they have a zero or a negative like footprint, but that means like nothing because the question is, are the carbon credits actually real, or what do they mean? And it sort of means like companies can kind of just like be even more profit driven and then use the extra profit to like make it seem as though they're green. I'd like to think that the portfolios you're describing are more like real.
Yeah, I
But
would hope so.
sometimes there's like an extra, yeah, there's always like, there can always be like a deeper layer of trick, but yeah, I would assume not for now that maybe the green is actually true. It's true that, because maybe hopefully solar panels and stuff are an emerging sector and growing in investment, and that like carbon or like fossil fuels would be getting shut down. It's a real struggle with like the current governments. Sometimes their current governments are like removing funding from green companies and giving it back to fossil fuels, and that's like a setback. Hopefully it reverts itself.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, it's not our job to solve the world's issues, and it's interesting because I believe it was David Attenborough, if I'm saying his name right, Sir David Attenborough, who is the narrator for Our Planet. At the end of that series, he basically creates or communicates a blueprint to solve the world's issues and gives case studies or examples that have happened in real life to show that they do work. And one of his solutions is population control. I mean, we're a locust at the end of the day. We're consuming resources and growing and growing and growing and expanding, and it's all about productivity and producing and consuming at the end of the day. That's kind of like what a locust does.
Yeah, this is a
Consume
difficult area. Because population control has been like in the thought realm for a while, and like there's definitely like the worst actors are able to use population control in order to do like terrible things. Like the whole field of like there's the whole field of like eugenics, which is like analyzing, I believe it's like analyzing people's brain, like the brains of different races, and declaring that some populations should be like culled or improved based on like intelligence. And like it's clearly like it's misguided, and people can kind of use it to justify like weird like ideologies. I think my current issue with population control is that there doesn't seem to be a way to do it without like infringing on human rights. It seems to be a thing where, yeah, a lot of people can like sort of in the name of that, they do something that is clearly like they have some other ulterior motive. So I'm like unsure at the moment what's going on with that.
Let's say education, birth control, among other things, cultural shift. It really should be not a right to procreate as humans, given the impact to the planet. I think it needs to be a privilege. And I think the privilege should be granted like a license, a driver's license. We take courses on good parenting. We achieve a certain stable income. We unite or come under contract with someone else who's going to help us raise the child. Like a contract that just can't be fucking abandoned. Like the government will come after you and take everything from you if you to pay your piece, where it's not like the woman or the primary caregiver has to chase down the other person. It's just automatic. Certain things in place would make people think twice about conceiving, and it would basically be like once you hit a certain age, the age to procreate, the mandatory appointment where there is a contraceptive that's put into you. And it could be just simply like any other doctor check that it can be non-invasive and basically people can have their fun, and they should obviously wear protection still because STIs are a thing, but at least babies aren't having babies. And I'm finding that, people who are not educated are the ones having all the kids. And the ones who are educated are like, well, the fucking price tag of a child is $250K. Now is not a good time. I don't want to grow up I don't want to raise a child like in the same circumstances I did, like because I grew up in not ideal conditions. And so like there's a movie that captures this well, Idiocracy, where lower IQ individuals are the ones that are procreating. It doesn't have to be I don't know if it's IQ
well,
related.
that movie, yeah, I liked that movie, but it's a very dangerous space because like if we go back to the like it could be the case that people that don't have as much money can't afford to like not have kids, or like because of the lack of education and because they can't afford, for example, like they might even have to pay some kind of money to get access to birth control or something like that. They
No, it's
they end up
provided.
having more kids. Yeah.
It would need
Yeah,
to
if
be
it's provided. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, because I guess the other interesting thing is like, could we like if we have some we need some kind of stability criteria that an individual like meets in order to have a kid. If we could create a world where like every human meets that criteria, then we would theoretically still have like too many, like if we enabled like if we sort of do what we need to do, like give the resources to every person who doesn't have enough resources, so that everyone can afford to like correctly raise 2 or 2.5 kids, and there's no real like risk, then we would still have like the population increase, and there'd become like we'd have to watch these rates of like how much population can we have and what is the rate, and we may reach a point where we then have to just decide like who gets to have kids and who doesn't. And I think we should at least avoid making the criteria essentially like how much money someone has. I think that's like a capitalism thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's basic.
Yeah.
That's part of it. But then there's like the agreements and stability and all the other stuff. So it would have to be well thought out, obviously, and it would have to be fair. And if you meet the criteria and that you take the courses and you demonstrate that you can be a suitable parent. And that's the thing too. It's like, what are the criteria? Like, do you have a history of mental illness? Do you have like, are we going to say to people, you have this gene that causes hamburgerism? I don't know. Like, I'm just making shit up. Like a combination between Asperger and autism or something like that. And we don't need any more of those fucking. But here's the thing too. It's those individuals may be beneficial to the planet. I mean, like they could have incredible capabilities.
Yeah, that's a
But
really good point. Yeah, like we almost don't know what criteria we would need to set. Like, is it sort of based on what do we want to achieve as a human? Like, do we want to achieve a place where people of all kinds can live comfortably? But how do we set, like then could we set any criteria that eliminates any group and still say that we're sort of achieving a very diverse world? Like we'd like to think that no matter what condition someone is in, they could live like a full life by being enabled by like the community around them. So then it's very hard to draw any sort of like to even decide like which country or which like subcommittee of the UN gets to decide like which religion, like there's no religion exemptions and everyone has to do it. And like there'd be so many rules that would have to come from some organizational body that almost for sure, like there'd be like it would be so hard to get everyone to agree to, it would be, yeah, it seems like,
it's impossible with
yeah.
the tools and the leaders, so-called leaders that we have in place right now,
Mm.
and the fact that we have about 200 different countries with different cultures and religions and fucking agendas, right? So it's like North America could
Yeah.
adapt it, and it could be forced upon the population. Be like, this needs to happen to save the planet. Like we're actually taking climate control seriously. We cannot get to 9 billion people if we're not already there. But then what about India and China? They're going to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, this
And
also is
China,
another area. I feel, yeah, it feels like there's a reactionary thing going on right now where, like some of the weirdos in North America, they're afraid that if we're not having enough kids, like we'll lose the battle of numbers to these other countries, which is not a huge, like if we just assume like who cares about like race or culture or whatever, like who cares about how many people of a certain kind are anywhere at a given time. If we just assume like they're all humans, that's fine. Then there's less worry. Like then we could put, like we could limit the growth of one of our own race and just assume that like that kind of would slowly mean over time that our race might go away if other countries grow in number and stuff, which wouldn't be bad.
yeah. Well,
But
there's the
a lot of
overflow
people are like
issue.
scared about that. Yeah.
Well, there's
Yeah.
the immigration thing. It's like we're not making enough babies apparently in Canada, and we need immigration to sustain our numbers. But we don't need to worry about a nation with a bigger population taking us over when technology is a thing. Because one machine gun with 30 bullets can kill 30 people. You scale that out depending on the weapon platform, right? Like it's no longer like shields and fucking swords where everybody in the battlefield, if they had equal technology, both had steel, numbers matter. It's not like that anymore. Our technology can elevate us to the point where we could have a small population and still defend ourselves. So it's what about the economy and producing more to consume more? Again, that's what locusts do. So yeah, it's figuring out the population issue. And David mentions what a good case study, like I believe it was within Japan and what's happening there to control their numbers. But everybody's saying that Japan is dying as a nation. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I do think
they
that
certainly have like an imbalance. If everyone in Japan was like shifted in age downward, maybe they'd still have like a workforce, but then they wouldn't have so much population density as they don't. But I think the problem is like a lot of the population is way too top heavy at the moment, and I think that's the issue. Maybe not the numbers, the raw like the total number, yeah. Because you can get like a cheap house and stuff in Japan. So I don't know. Yeah, it's
well, 3 different generations.
Yeah.
If they had a balance between the 3, and so we train the next generation and we stabilize the population by having an idea of what the population should be in a given country. And there's 3 different generations, and all those generations, those 3 groupings need to be balanced. Of course, give or take a few thousand, but not 100,000, not a million. And if we could maintain, a balance between the population, so until more people die, we can't have any more births. And if it was controlled by the state and the criteria met, like, a lottery could be done, right? One that's not riggable by
Yeah.
the rich. And so it's like, okay, 100,000 old people have died. We can now do a lottery for 100,000 births if the criteria are met. It
Here's
could
an
be done.
interesting thing about the lottery. Yeah, when you said lottery, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Is the only fair way to do it is a lottery. But I wonder if, like, if you win, like, let's assume every single person in the country is in the lottery, and then you choose some winners. You basically the winners would be forced to have a kid, because if they're not, they could pass up their spot, and you'd never know, like, if they pass up the opportunity to have a kid after winning the lottery, you'd never know if it's because they don't feel like economically ready, or like, because you'd assume if like a rich well-off
Oh, whoa,
person that
whoa,
could
whoa.
afford a nanny won, they always would.
Your name,
And but
your
there'd
name
also
gets
be like a
put in.
black market. Yeah.
No, your name gets put into the lottery only if you meet
But
the
then you could
criteria.
oh, if you meet, yeah, well then it's
So
the
you
same
don't.
problem of it's more like, the more important thing is the selection criteria for the lottery, rather than, like, the lottery seems fair, but it's all based again on the selection criteria, if that's fair. But if there's any non equally random criteria, there's possibility that it's not fair to get into the lottery. But
Yeah.
this is a very, like, yeah, I sort of wonder if it's possible to prove that there is no solution, like, for something like
No, there
basically,
is.
like, you take a bunch of different, yeah, well, I wonder, yeah, it's yeah, we either got to like find like something that is like a solution that is not biased in any way, or a proof that no solution could be found. But I wonder,
Well,
I sort of almost, my instinct says that it should be possible to, like, by the diversity and the law of large numbers, and the fact that, like, someone will always disagree somewhere on the planet. I feel like I would lean towards, like, it could be not possible, versus it feels like quite a tall order to come up with any policy that would be like true, just like not, just true and absolute or something.
yeah, at this point, it would have to be something that unites us as a population. And what comes to mind for me is
Yeah.
AI. If it doesn't choose to completely wipe us out initially because we are overpopulated, ultimately that something completely takes control, that is everywhere at the same time, all at once, that cannot be defied or shut down, and it basically crams us down our throat, but in a way that's fair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it
that
would
would
have to
be
be central power.
yeah. It could work, but it would also we sort of would, like, we'd give up control, like, we would sort of we wouldn't have any, like, it could work perfectly, but we wouldn't have any say. Like, it wouldn't be because humans that it worked. It would just be like a system was found that humans have no choice, and therefore, like,
Because
it happens.
clearly we
That's an
don't know
interesting
what.
idea of what if we could choose, like, if everyone on the planet could vote, like, there was a moment where everyone casts a vote. Do you want some kind of artificial intelligence system to just run things and probably do it in some somewhat fair way, or do you want to not have that happen and everybody has to vote, like, one way or the other? But I'm sure everyone
No,
would be like, it can't, the system could not be created by a certain country and stuff, or else everybody else would be suspicious.
this
So it'd be
democracy
hard to
doesn't
create.
work.
Yeah.
Democracy as it's now.
Well, I guess it's how it works is defined by what it's trying to do, because that's the dilemma. Is, like, if you want one person to make a decision and then have those decisions happen, then yeah. Oh, I think
Sorry,
your mic is
someone
cutting
was
out. Yeah.
Somebody was calling me. I didn't catch what you said. Sorry.
Oh, just that, like, in order to say if democracy works or not, we have to decide like what do we want to achieve? Because I've often thought about that is like when you look at like real democracy, it's just like a room of people yelling at each other and seemingly nothing's happening. But if you look at like the most like orderly societies, it's like one guy dictating, and you could argue that like everything's efficient and like streamlined, and when a policy is decided it gets implemented, and that looks like a lot is happening. But what is hidden is like all of the disagreeing voices are just like silenced, so it's very peaceful and it's very fast, but it hides the fact that like everyone is still disagreeing, they just can't be heard. Versus like, yeah, like the alternative is like the beauty of like everyone's voice is heard and listened to, but then by definition almost nothing can ever happen. But then we just have to decide, like, do we want stuff to happen, or is the thing that we want to happen to just have a room full of people just like debating all the time, which does that seems at least closer to like every human gets to feel like they're part of something versus like a component in a machine. But yeah, it doesn't look like progress because it's just like a fair argument always going on forever.
Yeah, we are evolved for tribes, smaller groups where everybody's equal. And that's still in our programming where we want to be equal. Even fucking
Oh, yeah.
poor people who haven't done anything with their lives, they want to be treated with respect. They want to be treated as equal because it's within us to. That's what we want. So democracy only works for smaller organizations, tribes of people, which is what, again, we've evolved for. When you start to scale, it doesn't work. And ultimately, the reason why we're able to scale is because some clever entrepreneur elected themselves fucking king under the will of God and ultimately controlled everything. And when that was overthrown because the people got upset or whatever, then they kind of said, oh, democracy is now the solution, but ultimately the people who are pulling the strings are the clergy. And now it's the conglomerates. The conglomerates have ultimately, and really, you think about the Catholics, they are just a business, and you subscribe to their service at the end of the day.
Yeah.
How do you think they're so fucking wealthy? Because of all of the tributes from the the rapture. I don't know what the fuck they call it. Like
Yeah, it's crazy. When I went to like Italy or like Rome, I saw like the Vatican City, and then I learned that like all over the world, like whatever church that is, the Pope and the Vatican, they own like pockets of land in every country all over the world that they don't pay tax on, and they collect like so much money in donations. They are like a super powerful, like they're like their own nation, and they get like so much donations and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that they don't pay
They have like
taxes
their own
to that,
laws. Yeah.
but the fact that they don't pay taxes to that nation is a problem in my eyes. But
Yeah, it is
that's the
like, yeah,
reality
it's
of it.
pretty weird. Yeah.
So there's no real democracy, and so here's how do slaves know what they want? How are we supposed to know as a general population the solutions to the world's problems? I don't truly know.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, no individual could know. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think in the end, what's going to have to happen is something's going to have to take control of us and ultimately guide us on the right path as a species. But we're not
I
there.
guess though,
Obviously.
wherever it guides us, do you think that there is such a path that we could be guided on that like in retrospect is the best one? I feel like there might not be. There might like every path would have some compromise where like hopefully the path would work for our kind of people, but it's like the path that works for everyone is would be like many different paths and such. And then like then we're not really, there's no like one narrative or something.
Whatever path it is, it has to be one that puts us in sync with nature so that we're no longer apart from it. Because by being a part of it, it makes us sick. We need to be in sync with nature, a part of the system
Yeah.
again, because that's how we evolved. And if we're beyond that,
I wonder, yeah. Yeah, go on.
we should move. we should move beyond the planet if we're not willing to work with it. Destroying it's not an option, and by being separated from it, it's making us sick as a people. So if we really don't want to be a part of it, then let's go find another planet. But I think really what we need to be doing, the end state should be stop making our lives so infinitely complex and simplify things by being in sync again with nature. And a way to do that is to significantly reduce our population because it's out of control, and nurture the best and the brightest. If we have food production, we don't all have to go do hunter gathering and agriculture. We can leave it to the machines, and we can work with the machines to come up with solutions for humankind, which could entail exploration and continue to better things around us and better lives. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of
Yeah,
life?
I think
Really?
right. Yeah, exploration is something that feels quite innate. Like we had exploration is something that's fairly fundamental to humans, like curiosity and stuff. It feels like a possible uniting goal. But then, if we can just do exploration in a way that doesn't like trample on people, but uplifts them, then that seems like fairly natural.
Yeah, and like instead of AI just taking over and wiping us out, merge with it. Yes, they can create metallic, mechanical bodies, but why not just have a human body and work with us? Because with nanobots, let's say that actually becomes a thing, it can self-repair, and I would say, yes, there is some, we need to eat and we need to sleep and whatever else, but there's ways to like change that with enhancements. An idea would be built-in photosynthesis. You could take the energy from the sun, which is not an infinite energy source, but nearly infinite, and reduce some of our caloric requirement by using the sun's energy and water, which is a renewable resource, and create our own sugars and change our bodies, evolve it to the next step where we don't need as much maintenance, which makes it more appealing for AI. And so then we can together focus on solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling ideas from different things that I have seen, animes and shows, and but these are all ideas from other human beings who have put these thoughts, these ideas into the plots of their work.
Yeah.
Way ahead of their time, for sure. But the saying is science fiction inspires science, and science inspires science fiction. That's where our cell phone came from. It was, I believe it was Star Trek, their little tricorder thingy. Now we have a fucking phone in our hand, like mine's in my hand. This is 20, 30 years ago. Come on, this wasn't a thing 30 years ago.
I guess we're still not
far.
sure if phones were a good thing or not. We don't know. They have benefit, but they're kind of like,
Phones are an
good
excellent
things
thing.
and bad things.
The problem is
just the notifications and all. Yeah.
The social media, like the jockeying
Yeah.
for our attention span and
making
us like anchored to it. But everything that we could do at our fingertips is excellent. It's just the numbing, the mind numbingness, the trap, the pitfall that social media creates. I've experienced it. I mean, I know a lot of people who experience it.
Yeah.
That's the problem with it. But and I don't know what the solution is for that. Well, actually, I keep hearing successful people talking about Taoism and finding balance and reducing screen time. But even they struggle with it 10 years ago, even when it was starting to become a thing. And it's fascinating because I was listening to a podcast from Tim Ferriss from like the beginning of his 800 episode series. And the guy was it Kevin Rose was like, already it's occupying our attention 10, 20 years down the road, which is, he says in 2014, it could be a serious problem. And well, guess what? 2025, it is a serious problem. So
Yeah.
anyway, it's
Yeah,
that's
I
a
guess.
topic for another day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll head out at this point.
All right, buddy. Good chat.
Yeah. Good chat.